everyone. Today we got to play Imperial Steam. So this is a railroad
Economic
delivery
action selection.
Yeah, there's some things going on with this game, but before we get into it, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell because board games are awesome, and that's what we do here. Randy, tell us more about Imperial Steam.
So this is a 2021 release. It just recently came out. Board Game Geek rating right now of 7.8. Rank is 3936. It plays 2 to 4 players. Box says 90 to 120 minutes.
It took us a little longer than that.
Yeah, it was a first time play, and it's beast to set up. So if you include setup time, it's probably another 30 to 40 minutes on top of that. Not to mention the just learning the rules, which was a beast, which we'll get to when we talk about rules. So yes, it's every bit of 120 minutes. Age 12 and up. The design is Alexander Humer. Art is Andreas Resch. Published by Capstone Games. MSRP for this is $69.95. You get a lot in the box, though. There's a lot of bits in this game. And you can find it online. I saw it at Card House for $49.95. So that's not a bad price for it. $50, I don't think. But I wouldn't pay $70, but $50 is pretty good.
Yeah, so let's talk about component quality. I actually like the money for this game. The cards are actually really nice. They are a linen finish.
They are linen finish, but
they do have a really good thickness and a good bounce.
They're curved, and if you put them back and don't pay attention, you get bowing on one side and a bowing on the other, so they slide a lot.
I see what you're saying.
If you put them face the same way, it wouldn't be a big issue. But when you're not paying attention, since they're double-sided, you might just stick them on there. And I know the 20 slid several times because people put them on there facing the wrong way. So yeah, I don't like the cards nearly like I would much rather use my poker chips, but the denominations are a little strange in this. So
I liked the money. I was actually happy with it, but I'm not the person that has to constantly fix the stack.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was over here minding my own business.
Yeah, the boards are not inlaid, the player boards. They are linen finish, but they're not inlaid.
But you do have your meeples, your workers. They're actually a little conductor shape. You've got their little hat on there. The investors have the big top hat. So I thought that was nice.
Well, I like that the actions are hands. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
You don't see that often where they actually carved hands to put as your actions.
Yeah, I kept wanting to sing, stop.
Don't sing it on here because then we can't post the video.
No, I'm not going to do that. But yeah, so I'm sorry. Every time I was like, stop. So I was singing a lot of the game, which may or may not have been.
I didn't hear it during the game, so maybe it was in your head you were singing it.
Hey, you know what? I saved you something.
Yeah.
So I liked the component quality. I think it was okay. I think, there was. Everything was very playable. It worked really well. I know you didn't like shuffling that over there. So for that, I'm actually probably going to give this 7.5.
Yeah, I'm probably there with you at 7.5, mostly because of the volume of bits. There's just a lot of bits in there. And a lot of I like the fact that the actions are tiles. I mean, they're not cards or anything. These are actual solid cardboard tiles. The other thing is they have different components for different player counts. So there's a lot of bits not in play right now because you replace all the cities if you have 3 players or 4 players with completely different cities. You get a different board for 3 or 4 players for not the main board, but for all these auxiliary boards. They have replacements for those for different player counts. So there's just a ton of bits that while you're playing with some of them are not even, about half the box is not being used. So I would say, 7.5 just from sheer volume. And I like the wood bits, the way they've carved them custom.
Yeah, I did like that. So now let's talk about feed. You own a business, you're building railroad, you have to build factories to get certain goods throughout, but then you have to have resources to actually build the roads, and then there's money. Oh, the money is so hard to come by in this game.
Money is tight.
I can't tell you how many times I was like, literally, I have no money. Normally, when you have the crappy take a little bit of money action, you don't normally take it, right? Like, I took it so much during this game because I needed every dollar. So it did feel. I liked it. I love the art on this. I love the feel of the game. I liked the color palette they did for this.
Yeah, I love the fact that I like the turquoise blue and the purple.
Yes.
The yellow and red were kind of but
we didn't have to play with them.
Yeah,
so I'm actually going to give this an 8 for theme. I really enjoyed it. I liked it, and I like the feel of the game.
Yeah, I mean it's obviously entrenched. I mean most railroad games are pretty entrenched as far as the gameplay, especially these heavier railroad games. And I like the fact that the items you can use your factories to produce they can be traded, or you can use them to construct, and they make logical sense that you would use those items for the construction. So everything fits in this game. So I'm probably giving it an 8.5.
Yeah. So then let's move on to rules. Randy was reading these rules for a while. Like I literally crocheted for about an hour and a half to 2 hours while he was just reading rules and doing setup.
It's a 32-page rule book, nice cover, and reference on the back as part of those pages. About half of that is setup. I can tell you that.
Oh, that's what took you so long?
Setup takes to page 10, page 10. That's where the setup finally ends.
Yeah.
So that is a lot of setup. The actual actions were not too bad.
It didn't. Okay, so once you got done reading it, we got to kind of jump into it fairly quickly because the actions were pretty.
Yeah.
I don't want to say straightforward, but they make sense for the game, so it was okay.
Yeah. Each one of them has their own unique, kind of attributes to it that might be things you forget. But the cheat sheet doesn't include everything. Or you can use the action
for doing free actions.
Yes. And then there's there's free actions you can take. Their cheat card is horrible. They have this little tiny card.
This thing,
it was useless, basically.
I don't even know, knowing how to play the game, I look at this and I barely understand it.
Yeah. So one side of the cheat card only has the free actions that you can take on top of the worker actions. Mm-hmm. And then the other side is for in-game scoring. Mm-hmm. And there's no way you would, unless you just knew the game, that this would have any value. And if you knew the game well enough, you probably don't need this. Right. So there's no reason for that. I mean, they should have done something a lot better.
Listen, I'm normally okay with games that are high on the iconography scale, but this one, I don't know, the iconography didn't really click with me.
Yeah.
It I don't know what it was about it. It just took a little bit more to figure out.
It was a beast to learn, and once you got it, I mean, it was still. Little things we had to keep looking up.
Well, no, but here's my thing. It's I was okay, I need to pre-buy. I couldn't remember which one of these were, I'm looking at the tiles and I'm I know there's a pre-buy action on mm-hmm. one of these tiles. Which one is it? And so for me, having to actually figure out which the tiles I was going to, I thought that was kind of, the iconography is not easy to, it's not easy.
I didn't have that issue. I just had issue trying to remember all those little subtle things where you have to spend money versus where you had to use gears and all of that kind of thing. And it's not well represented on the tiles. So you have to kind of keep looking back until you get the game down enough to know that you don't need to pay money for this action.
Yeah, I just think there are plenty of other games that have better iconography as well as, even though they're more complex games, they're easier to differentiate, and that wasn't the case with this one.
No.
So I would definitely gear this towards medium to heavy. What don't you think so?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a medium to heavy game, and more leaning towards the heavy side.
Yes, I agree with that one.
I mean, a lot of the railroad games are that way. I mean, you've got the exceptions like Ticket to Ride, but most of the railroad games tend to be close to the heavy side. Some of them absolutely are heavy. You get into the 18XXs, you're getting into the heavy.
I still want to play one of those.
Yeah, well, we have friends that play them. Some of them play tournament-wise, going to tournaments.
Well, I don't want to lose.
Well, you're going to lose.
Can I have a fighting chance, please? Yeah. Let's not go.
Well, I don't know that I want to sink the effort into learning them without somebody who knows it already. So I would want to.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough.
They're
we'll take a first.
They're going to be a challenge to learn, but we have, these are challenging enough for me. I don't know if those might blow my brain. So yeah, I'm gonna probably rate these rules. I mean, they are well laid out. I had to read through them several times just to make it click, so that I could explain it to you, so that you didn't have to go through this pain of trying to learn it.
I really do greatly appreciate it. It's one of the reasons why I married you, is that I don't
so I can
have to
translate rules.
Yeah, that's pretty much. Yeah, that's one of your positives for marrying
one of the
Randy.
very few positives I have.
No, I didn't say that.
I'll go ahead and give it a 7, just because I don't think there's a problem with the rules. It's heavy material. There are some things that I think are in the wrong locations in the book. It would have been nice if they put the end location, Trieste, that rule somewhere towards the end, where when you get to the Trieste where it ends the game, to have that at that location, as opposed to in a blurb on the building and the railroad section that wasn't even the main text. It was just a little offshoot blurb. So things like that just...
I might have tried to actually...
It took me a long time to find it, and I went on Board Game Geek looking for it, and I'm like, it's got to be in there, because nobody's asking this question, so it's obviously something I'm missing. So I finally did find it. So, you're going to need this rule book handy. And
yeah, I mean, but the reality is the cheat sheets were useless. The tiles weren't very clear. They didn't have all the information you needed for them. So... What did you give it?
I gave it a 7, because I think the rulebook itself actually is done pretty well.
So with those, but for me, I don't know. I've always put cheat sheets with rulebooks.
I do too. I would have probably given it an 8 if it weren't for the cheat sheets being so bad.
Oh, okay. All right. As long as you took that into consideration.
I did take it into consideration.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's talk about gameplay. All right, guys, this one is pretty heavy. So we'll go over the different actions.
Yeah, the actions are the principal things in the game. We'll go over the actions that are worker actions, and we'll go over the free actions that you can take.
Yeah, so I will say, we'll just kind of get the starting player thing out of the way. So you do a random starting player, but then everyone has, at the beginning of the game, opportunity to spend money on influence. 10 money for 10 influence. I think we spent too much money on influence at the beginning of the game.
I don't know, because in order to reach certain destinations where you can buy workers from, you have to pay a certain amount.
Well, I would have paid 30 if I knew you were going to pay 60 and have...
Well, you didn't know. That's the whole point. Where you secretly decide how much you're going to invest, and that's going to determine turn order for the first round. And then
so it's not even random. Like, it's not even a random first turn order. It is on how much you're willing to spend, because it triggers after that. But so the influence is what you're going to be purchasing to determine player order. It is important for multiple reasons. 1, it is turn order. 2, it allows you access to different cities to allow you to buy workers, and also it is end of game money or victory points at the end if your influence is higher than the other cities. Correct? So there's that. The one caveat that, that's more we'll talk after we kind of explain the game. All right, and then you get to play your actions at the start of the game. Now, there are 11 tiles.
Yes.
10 useful ones. So that we're going to talk about. So first is you've got to build rails in a railroad game. So that one's pretty straightforward. You can spend a brown, gray, and orange.
Which are wood, stone, and iron.
Color of the cubes. All right, you spend those and you get to build a railroad. Hashtag or 2. So you spend that cost and you can build 1 or 2 railroads. The key there, though, is you have to have the gears high enough to go to the city that you're choosing to build in.
And the gears are based upon your workers that you have. They come in at a level 1, and that means 1 gear per worker. You start the game with 2 workers, and you have to acquire more. So it's going to take you a while to get to cities, because most of them are 3 or higher. There's a couple 2s, but most of them are 3 or higher. And we played the basic setup where it's a fixed location, everything goes. The standard way is you shuffle them and randomly place them.
Yeah.
So you could end up with 6s at the top all surrounding you, and you may not get out of the gate right off.
Well, and the key thing is your workers do gain experience over time if you don't use it. If you don't use the worker, they took that action to study and better themselves, and then they go up in advancement. So I did like the fact that it was, well, let me rephrase. Sometimes it frustrated me that I couldn't force them to grow faster, but then other times I'm so glad because there was so much other crap I had to do that they just, all right,
but they only can level up 1, 2, or 3. They start at 1, so they're only going to level up twice. So it's not like you have this huge spectrum of workers, that are different.
Although that would be a really interesting, you could probably do a game on that. All right, so, but yeah, so I thought that was interesting. So, so just keep that in mind. Gears are kind of important. I think they were our bane towards the end of the game. We didn't maybe realize how important they were. I mean, I think we knew. We didn't count.
and then there's 2 specialized, I wouldn't call them workers, but they look like meeples.
They're engineers.
But you have to have them. They're engineers or experts. You have to hire them, and you only have one of each, a gray and an orange. But basically, they unlock the ability to go down specific railroad paths that are orange and gray.
Yeah, my assumption was tunnels and bridges.
They are. Exactly. That's exactly what they are, tunnels and bridges.
Look at that!
You were very wise. But yes, they also will cost you an extra gray cube or orange cube, iron or stone, depending on which way you're going. Yeah. So it adds to the cost of the actual deployment on the board, and they've got the grays and oranges paths strategically placed in all the places you want to go towards the
Oh my gosh, it is so lame. It's so frustrating sometimes. Because I never did get my gray, and anyway, the money's so tight in this game. All right, so, and that's the other thing. You start out with $120.
Well, that's with 2-player. It changes depending on number of players.
Okay, whatever. Keep your money close to you, okay?
Yeah. It goes fast.
It goes way too fast. All right, so so we talked about building railroads. The next thing you could do is actually gain the workers, which we've kind of already talked about. But essentially, as long as you have the appropriate influence, you can go to a city and purchase workers. As you purchase workers, they continuously increase in price. Basically, there's more demand and less workers to be available, so the price continues to go up. And again, we talked about the orange and gray worker.
Yeah, okay? Which those are tied to specific locations. You randomly select where the oranges and grays are going to go, but if that city that you have access to doesn't have the worker that you need as far as the orange or the gray, you're just out of luck.
And caveat, you don't actually have to reach the city by rail to have access to the purchasing worker option there. Basically, you sent them a letter. You send a carrier instead of having them go by rail car. All right, so the next action is to either build a station, or also, you could also build a factory. So it's basically building buildings. Now, you end up with 2, you have 3 stations total in the game. One is auto-placed at the very beginning of the game, at the beginning where everyone else starts. The other 2 you build over the course of the game. The cost that's associated with that is the cost that is on the tile. And as you remove them, you gain additional income throughout the income phases, and also an extra storage location for different goods. So that can be very beneficial. Now the factories, you pay the cost based on the factory chart, because as the more factories are built, they're more expensive. And the goods are worth less. So basically, the more supply, the prices go down. So you have that as well. Now, with the factory, building the factory, you have to have the appropriate spaces. You can't just randomly build them. So there at the beginning city, there is a couple of options based on how many players there are. But then as you travel to the different cities, they open up different factory locations. Some of them have special pricing, some of them don't. So you kind of go by the chart or the special pricing if it applies.
Yeah, right. When you build a factory, you're going to assign one of your workers permanently to that factory.
Permanently. It goes bye-bye, guys.
So you lose one of your skilled workers, and the level of skill they're at is how many production cubes that factory will be able to produce in its lifetime. So, it's ideal to send a level 3 trained worker there, because you get 4 cubes versus a level 1 where you only get 2, and that's going to burn out really fast. So I found the factories to be immensely useful in this game. They
Very,
were
very
very
useful.
important.
But still, they cost you a worker. It hurt.
Yeah, it definitely hurt. You got to buy lots of workers in this game.
Yeah, and they're not cheap.
Yeah.
They're not cheap. All right, so let's move on to the production phase. So there is a production option. So basically, if you play this, any of your factories, you could take 1 cube off of all of your factories. So if you have 1 factory with 3 cubes, you take 1. If you have 4 factories with various amounts, you take 1 from each of those 4 factories, so you'd end up with 4 cubes.
Yeah, and that's optional. You don't have to produce at every one. You can produce from 2 of them and not produce from 2. It depends on what you want to use.
Storage space is also very limited.
Especially at the beginning of the game, because you start out, you have the potential to have 3 trains, but you start with 1 train of length 3.
And they expensive, guys. They're expensive. If you notice the theme of the game, everything is so expensive. All right. So now let's move on to the next action, which is you can go to the market and buy 1 good of your choice. The costs are on the chart. However, as the supply goes down, the prices go up. And you're sharing that market with all the other players, so it ends up getting pricey towards the end of the game, depending on what the demand is. So you can buy 1 cube, or you can pre-order. Okay, so it's like you're letting them know in advance. Hey, you know what? I need a lot of goods. So here's my order. You don't get those resources right away, but you do get them at the beginning of the next round. And instead of being able to purchase 1 good, you're able to purchase 2 or 3, depending on the chart at the top of the board, because it changes from game to game.
So there's tokens that range anywhere from 2 to 5, and you shuffle them all together and play them out. Or if you play the starter the way we did, they give you specific ones to place in specific locations.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So that's that particular action. The next action is to build a train or upgrade your train. So as the game progresses, the locomotive industry starts to bloom, and they end up developing better trains. However, you only start up with 1 level 3 train. It's pretty pitiful, and you need to upgrade your train. So, and of course, the game opens up more trains, so you have different variety, but there is a set number. So, I figure with more players, there'll be a little bit more of a battle for those trains. But then again, like I said, you can upgrade them. So
Well, you put 1 token for every player. So there's more trains of each one. That we only had 2 because there were 2 players.
Okay. All right, but still. So, for example, this is a $70 train, but I get 7 cars with it. But say if I wanted to, the next one up would be 80. So what I would do to upgrade from a 70 to an 80 is I'd pay an extra $10 and I would upgrade the token. However, I will say if you buy the train, you get a coal automatically, but if you upgrade, you do not get an extra coal. So that was one of those little nuances that, that sometimes might get lost in that purchasing, because I bought a train and after I had to get a coal, I remembered it actually fairly quickly, but it was one of those things that I don't know how you're supposed to remember that. I guess there's
on there.
Yeah, but you're not really looking for it. All right, so the next action on the board is to get a contract. So the contracts only matter if someone actually reaches Terestia by the end of the game, which we almost didn't happen this game.
It was more challenging to reach the end than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. So basically, you pick one of the contracts on the board and you put it over into your thing. And so there's a couple of things that ends up happening. So there are a number of shields at the bottom of the card. Those shields will actually block train cars on your train. I got my contract a little too early because I blocked my very itty bitty train and I didn't have money to buy a new train. So that one was kind of rough. I had a really slow start because of that. So being aware that picking up contracts a little bit later in the game might be beneficial when you have more train space. But I will caveat that with is then you don't get your choice of contracts because other players may have picked them up in the process. But The other thing that ends up happening is that you have a number of investors that on the side of the card. The number of those, so in this case, this one's 2. You put 2 investors over here on your sideboard. Why does that matter? We'll talk about that in 2 actions from now. So understand investors are important, and we'll kind of touch back.
So the contracts, you start the game. There's 9 of them on the table. You get 3 level 1s, 3 level 2s, and 3 level 3s. That's all that's available for the entire game. There's no refilling.
So once it's gone, folks.
And those contracts are random, so you could end up with some of the factories, because they're based on completion by building factories. And if you don't build the right factories for those contracts, maybe you have a strategic need for iron, but none of the contracts have iron in them. You're just out of luck on filling those contracts.
Yeah, so it can get pretty rough. All right, so then let's talk about the influence. Now, we've already kind of mentioned this action at the beginning of the game, is you can spend $10 to increase your influence by 1. That's an action. Now, it's not just 1. You can spend as much money as you want to increase it by 1. So you can spend 50 to move up 5, or you can spend 1 and move up 1, your choice, or variation therein.
Before we move too far away, I want to finish one more thing on the contracts. The contracts, one, they're a big value to you if someone does reach Tree S, if you complete them. But if you fail to complete the contract and somebody reaches Tree S, they are negative that much money. So you have to pay for the contract, because I guess you ticked off your customers, you didn't make them happy, so you pay out of pocket for that, refund them their money. So basically, you win or you lose with those contracts, assuming someone gets to Tree S. If no one gets to Tree S by the end of the game, because the game will end either by someone reaching Tree S or reaching 8 rounds. If no one gets to Tree S by the end of the 8th round, then those contracts have 0 value.
Yeah, and I will like to mention that if another player makes it to Tree S and you don't, you are going to end up having to pay them for the railroads that you use in their system to make it there. So that and it's $20 per railroad. So that can get pretty nasty pretty quick, if depending on the routes that you have taken. Luckily, like right there at the end, I was able to connect to your railroad, so I wasn't paying an exorbitant
Because you would have been paying $220 to me to go all the way from the beginning down to the...
Right, so I was able to connect right there at the end because I couldn't make it to Terrace myself. I was short gears, so that was kind of nice. All right, so the next action is where we talk about investors and the stock market. So obviously you are a company and you have stock. I'm going to say there's 10 stock because you lose 10% every time you sell a stock.
Yeah, you don't want to go above, I wouldn't go 10 even, but yeah.
No. Okay, so let's talk about that. So the action is to go up on the stock market. If you go up on the stock market, you have to pay the influence that is in the square you are going into. So, and that ranges from 1 to 5. So you can end up spending quite a bit of influence to be able to go up that track. Now, the caveat there is, like I mentioned, those investors on the other side. So one of the free actions that have to do with it is based on your stock value investor level, you could have one of the investors buy a stock. So if, for example, my stock value was 60 and I had 4 different investors, the max I would get would be $60. However, if my stock value was at 130 and I only had 2 investors, I still would only get 60 because there's not enough people interested in my stock for them to pay any more. Now, if I were to even it out, I have 4 investors and I'm at the 130 mark, I would get 130 for my stocks.
Your first one. If another buyer went in, they would only pay 90 for it.
Unless you put more people in there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, if you go above that, yes. But I'm saying if you were leveled out and you had 130 and you had
it's
4
per
buyers.
Stock. You evaluated it each stock.
Time you have a buyer. Yep.
Yeah. But now, once you sell your stock, you're selling 10% of your company. So at the end of the game, you lose 10% of your score. Not 10 money, not 10 based on the stock value, 10% of your final score. That can get kind of heavy.
Yeah.
Now, in my particular instance, I paid $55 per investor, so 10% was $55, and I got 130 out of it each time. So that wasn't so bad for me. That was actually pretty good. However, it's 10%. So if you keep doing that with investors, it starts adding up pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely see doing it once or twice, maybe even 3 times, but any more than that, I feel like that would really debilitate you in the game.
Now, I don't even know why they bothered putting the other option on this tile is you can reduce your stock value any number of times.
I don't know why you would want to do that.
You either raise it 1 and pay the penalty as far as that, or reduce it all the way down, but it doesn't give you anything back. It's just reducing it down. So I don't know why you would even want to do that.
I don't understand that one. I really don't. So I'm just going to ignore it because it doesn't exist in my mind because there's no value add. All right. And then there's the take 10 money action. We use this quite a bit in the game.
Yeah, especially early in the game.
I feel very sad because it was like, I guess I have to spend a worker for 10 money.
Well, here's one of the keys things in the game. Each round, you start out with 2 actions, but each round for the first 3 rounds, you're going to gain an action.
Mm-hmm.
In this game, you have to use all of your actions. And if you use the same action, the nice thing is you're not competing with each other.
I do like that. Well, you're competing with yourself, though.
Yes, that's what I was saying. If you play an action and someone else wants that action, there's no penalty for them taking the same action you took.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to use the same action you already used this round, you have to go down 1 on the influence track for each hand you've already played on that action. So the first one's only going to be 1, but then the second time you play there, or third time actually, the first one's free. Second one's going to be 1. The third one is going to be 2, and so on. So if you really want to keep doing that action, it's going to cost you. So if they didn't have that 10 money, or if you, and the next one is a pass where you just skip your turn, you're going to end up having to burn some of your influence each round, which is because if you just don't have 5 actions you can afford, or 5 actions that are going to be beneficial to you, you still got to use those actions.
Mm-hmm. So again, the 10 money, and then the last one is pass.
Yeah. We didn't have to do it this game, but it could be beneficial if you, in those scenarios where you don't have any other actions, you have an option to pass.
Yeah.
But if you do it more than once, like we said, you're still going to end up paying an influence just for taking a pass action.
Yeah. So listen, manage well.
Yeah.
I will. So here's some talking about this. I actually really did enjoy this game. I loved it. It was heavy, like we've talked about. I really liked some stuff that was going on with this game. However, I almost got stuck just because I played wrong. Like, it's totally my fault, but I'm afraid that you can get stuck in this game. Like, you can get stuck in a...
Well, I mean, they have ways to bail out. I mean, you have the 10 money, you have the fact that you can sell your investors, and they give you one right off the bat to start the game. So if you get really horribly stuck at the beginning of the game, you have a bailout right there to get you some money.
Yeah. It's just,
I would not want to do that because it's a desperation play. I ended up having to do that, though, late in the game. I sold something for $40 just because I absolutely had to have $40.
Hey,
and it ended up costing me the game.
Yeah, well, hey, check it out. Well, then you wouldn't have been able to do what you did.
I know. The only way I could get there was I just needed $40 more.
I do have a little worrisome because there was a couple of there was a round that I was like, holy crap, how am I going to get out of this?
Mm-hmm.
And I figured it out. I raised my stock. I got me a contract, but that ended up blocking me. But I was like, dude, I've got to get money somehow, some way.
Yeah.
So here you are. I do have a fear that some people that don't have some people get frustrated if they get stuck, especially early in the game. I can think of 1 or 2 people that we play with on occasion that I think that wouldn't be fun for them. So kind of understand going on this game. You do have to manage well. And it takes a lot to get through that. So just kind of, I still enjoyed it, even though I got stuck. I was able to get a way out. Like you said, there are some escape mechanisms, but you don't really see them when you're first starting to play.
Yeah.
And so just be aware of that. I do think that that's kind of important to know. The influence track, I think is pretty interesting.
Uh-huh.
I like that. My only problem is I have more influence than you. There was no benefit to me. I didn't like that.
Well, I mean, there is. You get turn order based upon it. So there's
Right.
that.
I mean,
And
but I mean, like end of game scoring. I felt like
I think it's fine because, I mean, first of all, there's importance to getting above the cities. That's important.
right, yeah. But I got over them and over you.
But you can manage that by investing but sending cubes to the cities to raise it up too. So the city values will increase based upon goods being sold to them. So, and you have control over that. So you could potentially price the cities above the other players to the point where they give you more points. So it's a strategy. I think that's fine. Really, I enjoyed every aspect of this. I mean, as far as the managing, I didn't like the fact that my values went down based upon people buying more factories.
Look, supply and demand sucks, don't it?
Yes,
look at that.
Free market, darn you. And I do like the fact that I mean, I like the actions, the way they manage that you can't really impact other players except for building railroads. You can, if somebody wants the same path as you.
But it's $10.
But you just sat there and said how important money is and how scarce it is. $10 is $10.
It is really $10. Let me tell you, that has stopped me from doing several things in this game where I was short $10.
So, and I think it's going to be way more important the more players you have. We played with 2 players and our paths were completely distinct. But if you get more players, you're going to be running into places where you have to pay that extra $10.
Yeah, but there's enough stuff too, though, so it's not like completely crazy.
Yeah.
So I think, I mean, with 2 more players, it will get a little tighter.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it will be awful. I don't think it will have to be awful. I think there will be more demand for the orange and gray tokens. Not tokens. The engineers.
Yeah, but this is definitely an interesting puzzle, and I mean,
I liked it.
It's a brain burner. If you like brain burners, this might be a good game for you. If you don't like them, not a good try.
No, don't do this.
I'm going to give this probably an 8. I think that's where I'm at on it.
I agree. I liked it a lot. Definitely want to play it again.
Mm-hmm.
I know I could do this better, and I like games that at the end I'm thinking, I want to play again because I've got to figure it out. And this is one of those games. I am not, and we talked about this before, it's like sometimes you get done with the game and you're content. No, I'm not content. I want to play this again because I want to figure it out.
Capstone has been really hitting it out of the park lately. We had the coffee traders. We had this one. I'm going to definitely be checking Capstone regularly for new games because they're starting to become one of my favorites now.
Hey, Capstone, if you want to hit us up, we'll review your games. All right, well, thank you guys so much for joining us. We had an absolute blast. This was definitely a good game to get out if you like a little brain bird. We'll catch you guys later.
Bye.